الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله الذي غمر العباد بلطائفه وعمر قلوبهم بأنوار الدين ووظائفه فسبحانه ما أعظم شأنه وأقوى سلطانه وأتم لطفه وعم إحسانه ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله الذي أفاض على النفوس ذوارف عوارفه وأبرز على القرائه حقائق معارفه صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه مفاتيح الهدى ومصاحب الدجى وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتاب العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا ويرزقه من حيث لا يحتسب صدق الله العظيم وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في حديث من أصبح منكم آمنا سر به معافا في جسده عنده قوت يومه فكأنما هيزت له الدنيا أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Respected brothers, sisters, elders, youngsters, and those who are listening at home, the economic landscape of the world as we know it is changing, and whether it be due to inflation, unrest, or other issues, this is reality. Many people throughout the world, because of what's going on, they've been negatively affected, possibly through the loss of income. Unfortunately, we have seen in communities, Muslim communities throughout the world, that many businesses have been downscaled. Some businesses have closed their doors. And as a result, thousands of jobs have been lost as well. Naturally for us, this may cause sleepless nights, untold anxieties. However, if we focus on a few aspects, then despite the situation being challenging and difficult, we will not be overwhelmed and overcome by the situations around us, but rather we will be able to manage through these turbulent waters, through these difficult times with ease if we keep a few lessons in perspective. The first thing is that as Muslims we should focus on what we have. We should never focus on what we don't have. A very effective remedy in dispelling and removing depression and feelings of negativity is for a person to ponder over the countless favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed a person with. This is important, that we always look at the favors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us. Because when we start thinking about them, it would be impossible to come to a finite number. It would be impossible to come to a finite number. Every second of our lives, whether we are alive, whether we are asleep, we are enjoying innumerable bounties, invaluable bounties from Allah Ta'ala. Our businesses, our income, our situations may have taken a hit, but at least we still have something. We may still have our businesses, we may still have a portion of our income. We may have, because of difficult circumstances, we may have lost our jobs, we may be suffering in this financial crisis where inflation is all around us. But we still have food to put on the table for our families and for us. We still have that. This is something to be glad about. This is something that we should express shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on a daily basis. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, the hadith that I just mentioned in the Arabic portion of the khutbah, that Rasulullah ﷺ mentioned, because this hadith, it really puts things in perspective. Rasulullah ﷺ said, "Man asbaha minkum aminan, sirbihi mu'afan, fi jasadihi inda qutu yawmi fakaannama hizat lahu dunya." That whoever commences the morning safe and secure in his life, whoever commences the morning safe and secure in his life, and with good health in his body, and he possesses food he requires for the day, then it is as though the entire world has been accumulated for him. It is as if the entire world, hizat lahu dunya, the entire world has been accumulated for him. We're living, alhamdulillah, we're living lives of royalty compared to what the Prophet ﷺ went through, compared to what the Sahaba went through, compared to what the Tabi'een went through, and those who came after. We are living, alhamdulillah, lives of royalty. So we should look at everything with shukr. We should look at everything with shukr. We should have the utmost gratitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the entire day. The crux of the matter is that despite our difficulties, despite our losses, we still enjoy countless favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we ponder over these blessings that we enjoy, we'll realize that they far outnumber the few difficulties that we might have to endure. The few difficulties that we might have to endure, they are nothing compared to the innumerable blessings of Allah Azza wa Jal. A man, he once came to Yunus bin Ubayd. Yunus bin Ubayd, very famous tabi'i, very famous tabi'i. And he starts complaining of his livelihood. So Yunus bin Ubayd rahmatullahi alayhi asks him, would you exchange your eyes with which you see for 100,000 dirhams? Would you exchange your eyes with which you see for 100,000 dirhams? He said, no, I would never do that. So then Yunus, he asks, would you like to exchange your hands for 100,000 dirhams? The man again said, no, absolutely not. I would never give any amount of money. Yunus rahmatullahi alayhi, he asks, would you like to exchange your legs for that amount? And again, he replies in the negative. So in this manner, Yunus bin Ubayd continually reminds this person of the various favors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed him with, and that he's enjoying from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for free. And thereafter he said to him that I see that you're enjoying these bounties, these favors from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are worth hundreds and thousands of dirhams. Priceless. They are priceless. Yet you're complaining of poverty. Yet you're complaining of poverty. So, and this should put us in perspective. This should give us some perspective. That we have so many bounties that we just gloss over on a daily basis. We don't realize their bounties until we see someone who doesn't have those bounties. We don't see that these are favors from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until we see someone not having those exact same things that we are enjoying for free. There was a very famous businessman in Baghdad. I don't have time to go over the entire story, but I'll just give a name. This was in the time of the Khalif, Muqtadir Billah. Probably 2nd or 3rd century of Islam. So this businessman, his name was Ibn al-Jassas al-Jawhari, very famous businessman, very rich. His name comes in the books that he was extremely wealthy. So keeping a long story short, what had happened was that this person by the name of Ibn Mu'taz, he fomented some kind of insurrection against the caliph, right? Against Muqtadir Billah. He fomented an insurrection, went up against government and authority. He lost, so he sought sanctuary in this businessman's house, very famous businessman, Ibn al-Jassas al-Jawhari. So now what happened was, the caliph, he sends, his police and officials to somehow look for him and capture him. They find him in this person's house, this famous businessman's house, very rich, very wealthy. So what happened was, as a punishment, so they took the guy, and as a punishment, the caliph, Muqtadir Billah, he takes all of this person's wealth. Supposedly, he takes all of his wealth. And his wealth is equivalent to 1 million dinars. 1 million dinars. 1 dinar being approximately 3 grams of gold. So, this loss affected. Now imagine, you have all of this wealth. Now Ibn al-Jassas, he has this wealth. He knew he has this wealth. And it has been taken from him by the caliph. So, he's at a point where he's not eaten for 3 days. This man has not eaten for 3 days. He's on the verge of losing his mind. This man is on the verge of losing his mind, that all of this wealth just gone. And we'd probably be in the same situation that if we lost everything all at once. So this man, in just one fell swoop, he has lost everything. Finally, one of his friends sits him down and he shows him that, look, you may have lost the majority of your wealth, but you still have assets. You still have assets equivalent to something. You still have these assets where you can live your life. So on being shown these assets by one of his friends, he became overjoyed. And he explained that, by Allah, I was so grieved, I was concerned over what I had lost, that I showed disregard to all that I still possessed. I still possess something. I can still take care of my family. I can still eat. But he became oblivious because the vast majority of his wealth was taken by the caliph. So, and then he said that, in fact, I considered this wealth to be insignificant because I was comparing it to the amount of wealth that was confiscated from me. This is what I was doing. And I was on this verge of a complete breakdown. And if he told his friend that if you had not come to me at this moment, I would have lost my mind. And why not? Why not? This is the thing, that we can't be oblivious of the other favors and bounties from Allah Azza wa Jalla. We have to look at the underprivileged. Often the root cause of our negativity, depression, complaints, is that we look at those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed with more material wealth and possessions than ourselves. If we have a Toyota, we look at a man that's driving a Bugatti. If someone has if we have a Bugatti, then we look at someone who has a McLaren F1. So we're never satisfied with what we have. And Rasulullah ﷺ has taught us an amazing recipe for happiness. He asked us to look at those who are underprivileged in regards to this world. Look at those who are underprivileged. And those who are ahead of us in deen. This is how we should look at people. That those who don't have enough, look at them. And those who are ahead of us in deen, we should look at them. So that we have this motivation to become better in our religion. Become better in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This will allow us to appreciate the abundant favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we enjoy on a daily basis. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned in hadith in regard to انظروا إلى من أسفل منكم ولا تنظروا إلى من هو فوقكم فهو أجدر ألا تزدروا نعمة الله عليكم. That look at those that are lower than you in material. Don't look at those who are above you. Don't look at those who have more than you. Because it is more likely that by doing this, you will disregard the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon you. That if you look at those people who have more, you will start to disregard and become oblivious of the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we enjoy for free. In other words, the man who's driving a Toyota should look at the man using public transport, such as a bus or taxi. The man using public transport should look at those who are using a bicycle because they can't afford the bus fare. Those riding a bicycle should look at those who are walking. Those who are walking should look at those who are in wheelchairs. Those in wheelchairs should look at those who are bedridden. And so on and so forth. And so on and so forth. One of the avenues that blinds us from the bounties that we enjoy and becomes a means of misery and depression is that we or our families are constantly viewing the lives of others, possibly on social media, Instagram, and these various social media platforms that have just come up. So we look at their lives. We look at their lives and we relish that, you know what, we need to have a life like that. I need to have a life like that. I need to have a life like that. There's much evil in social media. If it is not used correctly, there is much evil. But this is one of the issues in Muslim communities, that we look at social media platforms and people who are constantly showing off with what they have. And then we have this impression, you know what, I should have this as well. This is how we live. This is how the youth live. They're always looking at, you know what, I should have this too. Rather, we should teach them. We should teach our younger generation. We should teach our kids that they should be satisfied with whatever they have. They should be satisfied with whatever they have. Don't look at those who have more. Look at those who have less. Look at those who have less. We should manage our finances. This is another thing, that we live in a time when most people are living beyond their means. We know this. Most people, the vast majority of people, are living beyond their means, or they're just paying off on a monthly basis installments and debts. You know, credit facilities, banks, credit unions, they market themselves in credit cards. They market themselves in such a way that we are deceived into believing that being able to pay off the monthly installments means that we can afford the item. That's how they market themselves. All these banks, credit cards, this is a marketing scheme. And forget the whole interest issue. But we should be a little bit more prudent than that. We should be a little bit more wise when it comes to marketing schemes. The simple rule, I've said this before, is, you know, if we have the cash, by all means, spend it. Cash is king. But if we're just using, it's a different matter if we're using the credit card because we want the points and stuff. But if we can't afford something and we use the credit card with this in mind, that, you know what, as long as I can pay it in installments over time, I can afford it. No, only buy something if the money is there. If the money is not there, then yes. So the last thing, we need to learn and teach our families as well. We need to learn we need to learn and we need to teach our families to live within our means. Our income is fixed, stipulated salary. So it's out of our control, but the expenses are within our control to a certain extent. We can choose to pay less. Standard of living, this is something that is part of our society. Right? Unfortunately, we continuously increase our standard of living until it's so high that it's unaffordable to maintain. This is actually a recipe for poverty. Rasulullah mentions in the hadith, "Man iqtasada aghnahu Allah, wa man baddara afqarahu Allah." Rasulullah mentions that whoever is moderate in his spending, Allah Ta'ala will make him independent. Allah will grant him sufficient wealth. And whoever squanders wealth, whoever wastefully spends, Allah Ta'ala will make him destitute, because it's never going to be enough. In fact, not only should we live within our means, rather we must even strive to live below our means by bringing simplicity in our lives. Even though we might be able to afford better. We should live a very simple life, an austere life. This was the way of the companions. And of course it's not haram. It's not prohibited to live a luxurious life. This is not something that the Sharia has discouraged. And I've mentioned this before as well. Imam Malik rahmatullahi, he lived a very luxurious life. But at all times we should keep in mind that we should never put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as second. We should never put the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as second. But if we live an austere life, if we live with simplicity, this will be helpful for us. Just in case if there's an unforeseen circumstance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbid, or there's some financial setback in our lives, then at least we're used to living a simple lifestyle. We should place our hopes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We must always remind ourselves that if the means of our income has been affected, the true provider will always be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has cared for us to this point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always there. If we turn to Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to desert us. We have to remember Allah ta'ala has looked at us from the beginning. He has looked after us from the beginning. So when we couldn't think, we couldn't speak, we were completely dependent from that point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has looked after us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to abandon us now. Our rizq is written. Our sustenance is written. If we place our hopes and trust in people and means, inevitably, we're going to be disappointed. And we're going to be let down. But if we place our hopes, if we place our dreams upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will never let us down. Furthermore, we will enjoy peace of mind. We will have peace of mind, we will enjoy peace of mind. Our mind will be free from anxieties and worries. Because we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking after me. Take the lesson from a bird. Take the lesson from a bird. The Prophet ﷺ has taught the ummah to adopt permissible methods for their needs. But the Prophet ﷺ has also reminded us that our reliance and faith should not be in the means. It should not be in the means. Rather, our conviction at all times must be upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is providing for us constantly. So in a hadith, Rasulullah mentions, لَوْ أَنَّكُمْ تَتَوَكَّلُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ حَقَّ تَوَكُّلِ لَرُزِقْتُمْ كَمَا يُرْزِقُ الطَّيْرَ. So the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith is saying that if you have conviction upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, true conviction, if you have belief, if you place your trust and reliance on Allah as it ought to be, by having firm conviction in the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will definitely be provided for. Similar to how a bird is provided for. تَغْدُو خِمَاسًا وَتَرُوهُ بِطَانًا. That when they leave their nests in the morning, how many birds do we see? When they leave their nests in the morning, they're empty. Their bellies are empty. But when they come back to roost, they're satiated. In the evening when they come back, they're full. Their bellies are full. Who has provided for these birds? It is Allah Azza wa Jal. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Birds, they don't sit in their nest the entire day. They adopt the means of seeking sustenance by leaving their nests in the morning in search of food for the day, and at the same time they place their trust upon Allah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to provide. This is the mindset that we should adopt as mu'mineen. As believers, this is the mindset that we should adopt. We shouldn't rely completely on the means. Yes, the means is there. And Rasulullah ﷺ has told us that go and search for the means. But at the end of the day, it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who ultimately provides. In the event of one door of income closing, a Muslim is fully aware that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to open countless other doors for him. One's attention should always be focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person's attention should always be on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not the apparent means. The more a person places his trust, tawakkul on Allah, the more Allah Ta'ala will make him independent of the means. Shaqiq Balkhi, he was a very famous ascetic. Shaqiq Balkhi, you may have heard of his name. So he was a saint that passed away in the 2nd century. So he was one of the leading personalities of the era. He's one of the contemporaries of legends like Ibrahim Adham. So once in the initial life of Shaqiq Balkhi, before he became a renowned saint, Balkh, the area of Balkh, it was struck by a severe drought. Struck by a severe drought. So in these severe, difficult circumstances, Shaqiq, he observed a slave, a servant. He's carefree and he's happy, he's cheerful. He's happy, he's cheerful. Everyone else is worried. Everyone else is they're suffering from anxiety. How am I going to feed myself? How am I going to feed my family? So he sees this slave, he sees this servant, he's all happy, he's carefree. He doesn't mind what's going on. So Shaqiq, rahmatullahi, he asked him, that why are you so cheerful? Everyone else, there's anxieties all over their faces. Anxieties all over their faces. They're unhappy with this entire situation. Do you not see people, how they're affected with grief because of this drought? So this slave replied that the drought doesn't concern me, or it doesn't affect me, because my master, he owns an entire village. My master owns an entire village from which all of our needs are fulfilled. All of our needs are fulfilled. And this statement struck a chord in the heart of Shaqiq Balkhi. It struck a chord. He said, if his master owns an entire village, whereas he's merely the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His master is merely the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is poor compared to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ghani, and he has no worry and concern for his sustenance. Then how can a Muslim be overcome with concern for his sustenance when his master Allah ta'ala is the most wealthy of all? How is it possible? So it's examples like this that really put things in perspective. It's examples such as these that put things in perspective. That what kind of relationship should we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It should be a relationship of complete trust, tawakkul. Yes, cross the T's and dot the I's. Do whatever we can. But at the end of the day, a point has to come where we submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A point has to come where we submit entirely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We see that he did everything that was within his power. The entire seerah, when we go through it, we see that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very meticulous. He always planned ahead. He crossed the T's and dotted the I's. But at the end, he submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Complete and utter tawakkul upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Abdullah bin Masud was on his deathbed, he's approaching the final moments. This is in the time of Uthman radiallahu anh. He's the third Khalif. So Uthman radiallahu anh came to visit him. So during the visit, Uthman radiallahu anh asked that, should I not instruct the Baytul Mal to give you some kind of allowance, stipend? So Abdullah bin Masud said that, I have no need for it. La hajat li. I have no need for it. So Uthman radiallahu anh, he responded, the allowance will be for your daughters. This allowance, okay, it's not going to go to you. It's going to go to your daughters after your demise. So Abdullah bin Masud, we have more attachment to our daughters. As parents, we will always have more attachment to the daughters. So Abdullah bin Masud, he said that, do you fear that my daughters will fall into some kind of poverty? So you don't need to fear this for them. I have instructed my daughters, look at this yaqeen. Look at this conviction. I have instructed my daughters to recite Surah Al-Waqiyah. I have instructed my daughters to recite Surah Al-Waqiyah. I heard the Prophet ﷺ mention that the person who recites Surah Al-Waqiyah every night, poverty will never afflict him. Poverty will never afflict him. So Sayyidina Abdullah bin Masud had firm iman, firm conviction that Allah Ta'ala alone provides sustenance. So he knew that the best investment that he could leave for his daughters, securing their financial future, was Surah Waqiyah. I mean, this was their iman, this was their conviction that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the true provider. So such was this iman that he even turned down the allowance from the Khalifa. He turned down a stipend from the Khalifa. But we should take an example from this. Invest in reciting Surah Waqiyah. How long does that take? Takes what, 3-4 minutes? It's 4 pages. On a 13-line Quran, it's 4 pages. On a 15-line Quran, it's 2.5. We can definitely, this is some portion of the Quran that we should keep in mind and try to recite. Salat and taqwa. Salat and taqwa, when a person offers salat and has taqwa, then this is a guaranteed means of acquiring sustenance. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in the Quran? وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا لَا نَسْأَلُكَ رِزْقًا نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكَ نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكَ وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلتَّقْوَى. That command your family to perform salah and adhere to it yourself. We don't ask sustenance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, we're not asking sustenance from you. We will provide you sustenance. And the ultimate end is for taqwa. Allah Ta'ala is informing us that the direct link, that sustenance is the direct link to salah. It's directly linked. If we want sustenance, then we need to be regular with our salah. If we want sustenance, then we need to offer salah on time, correctly. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open the doors of sustenance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put barakah in our sustenance. He will grant us lawful and wholesome sustenance that will be productive. It will bring joy, happiness, serenity. Our needs will be fulfilled. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in another verse says, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. That whoever fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will make an out for him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make a makhraj for him. And وَيَرْزُقُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. and He will provide him with sustenance from avenues that are unimaginable. So many stories related to this verse. Unimaginable. But what is the condition? What is the stipulation? The stipulation is taqwa. The stipulation is having a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Having a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn al-Qayyim mentions that just as adopting taqwa pulls and attracts sustenance, leaving out taqwa, leaving out being God conscious, pulls and attracts poverty. It pulls and attracts poverty. The most effective means to acquire sustenance is to leave out sins. Rasulullah mentions that inna rajul la yahrum ar-rizq bidh-dham yusibuhu. That a person is deprived of sustenance due to the sins that he commits. Due to the sins that he commits. Leave out sins and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open the gates of sustenance. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونشكره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه والاه أما بعد عباد الله فإني أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله العلي العظيم القائل في محكم كتابه يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا وقودها الناس والحجارة عليها ملائكة غلاظ شداد لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون واعلموا أن الله أمركم بأمر عظيم أمركم بالصلاة والسلام على النبي الكريم فقال إن الله ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد يقول الله تعالى يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم إن زلزلة الساعة شيء عظيم يوم ترونها تذهل كل مرضية أما أرضعت وتضع كل ذات حمل حملها وترى الناس سكارى وما هم بسكارى ولكن عذاب الله شديد اللهم إنا دعوناك فاستجب لنا دعانا فاغفر اللهم لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم اجعلنا هداة مهتدين غير ضالين ولا مضلين اللهم استر عوراتنا وآمن روعاتنا واكفنا ما همنا وقنا شر ما نتخوف عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واشكروا يزدكم واستغفروا يغفر لكم واتقوا يجعل لكم من أمركم مخرجا. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قام الصلاة قد قام الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألهاكم التكاثر حتى زرتم المقابر كلا سوف تعلمون ثم كلا سوف تعلمون كلا لو تعلمون علم اليقين لترون الجحيم ثم لترونها عين اليقين ثم لتسألن يومئذ عن النعيم. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.